Nano Machine by Ang Hongweolja. Chapter 378. Don't touch him. Part 1. Being invincible can be weird. The difference between a low-ranked master and a high-ranked master wasn't very big. However, the stronger a person got, the bigger the gap would get. It was one of the reasons why the people of Wulin clung to the concept of strength, higher levels, and internal energy rather than working hard to reach a higher noble status. For example, the internal energy and chi required to use techniques would become less as one achieved higher levels of cultivation. Of course, when it comes to techniques, their efficiency depends on the situation, the use, and the understanding, more than the cultivation level. Nonetheless, such dependency simply fades away when the warriors reach higher levels. Lim Gyua, the Wave Sword. He had reached the perfect Supreme Master level. Even compared to the top 5 skilled warriors of the past, he must be one of the top 3. Moreover, he had lived for a very long time. His experience in martial arts would most likely make him the strongest person in the current Wulin. Oh goodness! How could he be taken down so easily? Great Guardian Marakim and Great Elder Ranyang, who were worried about their lord, were immediately confused. It had all happened before they could even try to dissuade their lord from engaging in battle. The moment that Lim Gyua appeared and revealed his identity, they'd grown worried that Yoan might be in danger. However, it ended in Lim Gyua's swift decapitation after just 3 strikes. Ugh! Unbelievable! Elder Chongsu and his disciples, who were watching from the side, wore dumbfounded expressions. Was there a sky above the sky? When they saw Lim Gyua, who was called the Guardian Escort, rumored for his unparalleled strength, they'd also grown worried. But then, Chun Yoan had cut off his arm and neck as if he was dealing with a low-level warrior. There is no way that what my eyes just saw is an illusion. It must be the black invisible sword he made using that black flame. Invisible sword. A tangible sword known to be formless with intangible energy. The legendary sword of Dako Gyupi of the Mount Hua sect, which could only be achieved when one reached the Divine Master level. That sword definitely has no sword chi. The strength which gets aggregated by the chi is excellent, but it couldn't be compared to this invisible sword he'd just witnessed. Its power was astonishing enough to pierce through the wave sword shield, which became harder and sturdier with every attack. Divine Master. A small, quiet, and short mumble, but its impact was enormous. Most of those in the underground were martial arts users, so they were well aware of the cultivation levels. There was no way that those who practice martial arts wouldn't have heard of the Divine Master level, the level told of in legends. No way. Divine Master level? Does that even exist? The admirals, the commanders, and all the other eunuchs were all shocked and confused. A shocking scene that displayed how easily the Guardian Escort had been killed. Being one of the 17 leaders of the forces of justice, he really shouldn't have been moved by Chun Yoan. Ho-ho, that person is taking another step closer to becoming invincible. A real monster has been born within the demonic cult. Heavenly God. However, he couldn't help but acknowledge him. That was when a question popped into Elder Chongsu's mind. Maybe the lord of the demonic cult can be compared to the monster in the east? A monster from the east that no one could touch. There wasn't much information about the monster because he didn't walk along with other members of Wulin, but he was one of the 5 great warriors and had a wild character of God in his title. He was also called the God of War and God of Battle. And it was said that he had earned all these titles with only the use of his 2 fists. A monster against a monster. A loud scream entered Elder Chongsu's ear. "Yeah! You! Step away from His Majesty right now!" Northern Commander Yangzhou was pointing his sword at Chun Yoan, his hands trembling visibly. After killing the Guardian Escort, Chun Yoan approached the Emperor with just 2 steps. However, seeing the overwhelming power Chun Yoan had, Yangzhou couldn't move his feet no matter how much he tried. "I'll die with just 1 strike from him." It was certain that he was going to be killed the moment he stepped out. Whilst he was struggling to overcome the fear, a blue blade suddenly touched his neck as he struggled to stand. It was the Great Guardian, Marakim, wearing a mask with a unique pattern. "The Dark King! I swear, 1 more step and you lose your head." Ike! Yangzhou's face turned dark as his heart leaped into his throat. He'd completely overlooked the fact that it wasn't just Chun Yoan in the underground shrine, but also Ranyang, who claimed to be a member of demonic cult and great guardian Marakim. As Yangzhou shut his mouth, everyone's eyes focused on one place. How can the guardian escort be so helpless? The head of the guardian escort, Lim Gyua, was rolling on the cold floor. His eyes were still open as his death came as fast as lightning. Can you deal with that person? I'll have to compete to know, but don't worry, I don't think I will be defeated. Those were the words Lim Gyua, the strongest person in the imperial palace, had uttered before his death. He hadn't lost his confidence even after encountering the 5 great warriors of his time, so how could he not withstand one arrogant and inexperienced lord? What did I end up doing? He'd only been trying to gain control of them but had ended up losing his guardian escort, the legacy he had inherited from his predecessors. The emperor's confidence, which had never wavered, began to crack. Embarrassment was visible in his solemn eyes, and he unconsciously took a step backwards. Step! Chun Yowan's eyes lit up. Oh, are you afraid of me? Everyone's eyes quickly locked onto Yowan as silence suddenly fell. The emperor's eyes shook. To the emperor of the great empire, who had always ruled and never backed down, stepping back would mean he was accepting defeat before his opponent. No, I am the emperor of this white empire. This can't happen. Bewildered, the emperor glared at Chun Yowan and shouted, "Arrogant! Step back! Right now!" Hearing that, Chun Yowan couldn't stop himself from smiling. Even though he had instinctively stepped back, the emperor didn't want to recognize the power of the demonic cult. Enjoying the way things were turning out, Chun Yowan opened his mouth. "You seem to be misunderstanding something. Your Majesty? Misunderstanding? Are you trying to ridicule me? You can actually order me, Your Majesty, but only when you are superior to me." With those words, Chun Yowan took another step closer to the emperor and raised his hand. Wong! The emperor's body slowly began floating in the air. The emperor's expression hardened at the humiliation he was facing for the first time. How dare you put the emperor through this? Admiral Seo Taesik of the Cardinal Spear, who had deep loyalty to the imperial family, couldn't stand still and began yelling as he took out his weapon to save the emperor. Fight! He tried to move towards Chun Yowan's back and stab him with the sword, but there was no way Chun Yowan's subordinates would let that happen. Wiang! Ano! Just as he was about to aim for Chun Yowan, a pillar of hot fire soared right in front of him, creating a flaming wall. Flustered, Seo Taesik turned his body to avoid getting hit and tried again, when Rand Yang reached out and unleashed more fire. Who gave you the permission to act like this? Admiral Seo, if you have no intention of dying, don't do things you'll eventually regret. Guardian, I'll remember this? If he could, he wanted to cut through the fire, but if he tried to do anything, Rand Yang was ready to kill him. However, as a subject, he couldn't watch the emperor be humiliated. It was his duty to protect the emperor, even if it meant losing his life. Cut one's flesh and cut the opponent's bones. Admiral Seo Taesik of the Cardinal Spear tried to break through the pillar of fire created by Ranyang with the resolution to cut one's flesh and cut the opponent's bones. How dare you? While Seo Taesik was deciding, Ranyang's flames, which began to narrow the distance, gracefully moved to the air and aimed for him. Woong! Seo Taesik gave up his defense and raised his sword, rushing towards the fire. Clench the teeth and hold on. I will cut into the back of this devil and its fire. After all, that was his simple plan. The pillar of fire was blocking him from approaching Chun Yowan's back. If he could go past it, he could cut Chun Yowan down and save the emperor. With that determination, he struck the pillar of fire with his sword, imbued with sword chi. That can't be. The pillar of fire, which he thought would split at once, rose like a whirlwind and easily deflected his sword. The dead guardian escort, Lim Gyua, had managed to put out the flames, making Seo Taesik believe that he could too, but this time the flames had manifested from Ranyang's body. There was no way that he could deal with a supreme master. That was the final warning, Admiral Seo. Damn it! Fuck! 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 Ranyang's graceful hand aimed at Seo Taesik's back and attacked. Admiral Seo tried blocking it, but he wasn't on the same level as her and he received the full brunt of the attack. Quack! Thud! The sound of broken bones was clearly heard. He'd tried to use his life in exchange for Yoan's, but in the end, he had given up his own for nothing. There are only 5 members of the demonic cult. Do you mean to commit treason by allowing His Majesty to be humiliated? Yes. Clang. At Siote's 6 words, they all drew their weapons. They were having a hard time figuring out what had to be done in such a chaotic situation, but the words of Admiral Sio had managed to knock some sense into them. Yeah. No matter how good they are, there's only 5 of them. We are superior in numbers. As long as he is human, there is no reason why we won't be able to take him down. Even if they weren't as skilled, their numbers alone exceeded 300. It seemed like there was a possibility of taking him down if they constantly attacked. Cough! Cough! Aim for the Lord of the demonic cult. Yes. Fight! At Siote's command, they went to attack Chen Youan, who was controlling the Emperor. Put down His Majesty right now. You arrogant man! Ja! 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 The sound of swords clashing reverberated throughout the shrine. 300 eunuchs and guards had finally started moving together. If you put me down right now? Chen Youan shook his head at the Emperor's words. Abandon your useless expectations. What? An unbelievable thing happened in front of the Emperor's eyes. Chen Youan raised his left hand and opened his palm. The guards who were charging forward to attack suddenly got blocked by an invisible wall. Bang! Ugh! And my nose! What is this? A few of them hit the invisible wall really hard and ended up breaking their noses. Chen Youan lightly waved his hand towards those who were bumping into the invisible wall. Fight! Quack! Ack! A strong wind pushed at them and flung them backwards. Take him down. Yes. Fight. Thud. The guards, who were waiting for a follow-up attack, were ready to jump past the wall when the wind ended up blowing them away too. Yuk. Quack. Those who were trying to help the flying guards ended up puking blood because of the force with which they'd been flung backwards. They had all ended up suffering some kind of internal injury. Eik? Everyone, attack at once. There is only one enemy. One. Hundreds of guards who were at the back got ready to attack Chen Youan, whose skills were taunting them. Siararark? Huh? This? A shiver ran across their spines. Youan had managed to bring down the 300 eunuchs and the guards all together. This energy is? This should be impossible. Flustered, they tried to make sense of what was happening. Thud! 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 300 people had knelt on the ground, their faces white, unable to withstand the energy pressing down on them. Ugh, he is a monster. Your Majesty? They'd thought that if they attacked constantly, they could push back the monster and free their emperor. However, they couldn't even raise their heads at the moment. They couldn't even see what would happen to their emperor. How could a mere human do such? The emperor got nervous after seeing the eunuchs and the guards kneeling in front of someone else. Even if he wanted to maintain his calm, it was becoming harder and harder with every passing second. Chen Youan, satisfied, turned his head towards the emperor. It got quiet at last. Now, shall we continue our talk? Unlike Chen Youan, who was relaxed, the emperor couldn't even open his mouth. Chen Youan continued to speak. Do you understand which side would have a favorable outcome if this continues? The emperor didn't want to admit to Chen Youan's words, but he had no choice but to agree. A monster like him would be able to invade the palace and kill everyone in the imperial family if he wanted. A frightening reality that made his heart start to shudder. Well, I'm sure you know this, but the reason why the first emperor signed the treaty wasn't because of the achievements made during the founding of the empire, but to protect himself. Come. Humiliating, yet no room for objection. However, his pride and authority as an emperor didn't allow this humiliation to continue. The emperor's face grew red with anger. I made a number of concessions thinking that you deserved a chance. But do you think that even after threatening me like this, you'll be able to get out? Even if you are this strong, not everyone in your cult is like this. Your Majesty is so diplomatic even in threatening situations. At Chen Youan's laughing words, the emperor had an absurd expression. Ha 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 ha. He glared at Chen Youan and shouted, "You are making fun of me. No matter how reckless you are, you should be well aware of the aftermath of killing me, this land's emperor." The confidence of an emperor. probably because of all the years he had ruled over the land. If he died immediately, a civil war would occur in order for a new government to form and for a prince to be given support as the next ruler. If the political situation became chaotic, the West and the North, who had constantly been at war with the Empire, would aim for the capital. "You can't threaten my life with this." Huck! Hook! At that moment, the sharp edge of White Dragon blade slightly cut the Emperor's neck. Bewildered, the Emperor gasped in surprise. What the hell do you think you're doing? Your Majesty seems to be overconfident about your existence." "What?" "When a tooth falls out, a new tooth emerges and takes over the role of chewing. That is how this world works. In the end, someone else will take your place." What are you saying?" Chun Yo-won noticed the trembling in the Emperor's voice and looked over at Zhu Taikon. "There is a very good tooth over there. Besides, he is a shogi horse that I can move at my will." The furious face of the Emperor, which was full of rage and anger, immediately turned corpse-like white. Chapter 379. Don't touch him. Part 2. What is he trying to do? Prince Zhu Taikon, who was observing Chun Yo-won, was shocked. The conversation between him and the Emperor had deviated a lot from their agreement. All of a sudden, Yo-won was talking like a villain who had plotted a rebellion since the beginning. The situation had totally changed, and a sense of fear ran down Zhu Taikon's spine. "Are you planning on killing me?" The eyes of the Emperor trembled. Unlike the Yulin people he knew, the lord of the demonic cult standing in front of him was an inescapable nightmare. Chun Yo-won looked directly into the Emperor's fearful eyes. "You think I won't kill you, Your Majesty?" Gulp. As he spoke those words, the white dragon blade that was pressed against the Emperor's neck dug deeper. It was to show that his will to kill wasn't a show. Ugh! He's really serious about doing this. The Emperor was someone who had never been hurt or mistreated even once in his entire lifetime. The ominous feeling of death couldn't even be expressed, as the blade was pressed into his neck. "How dare you, a lowly cultist, act like this towards His Majesty?" Shang! Yangzhou, the northern commander, was so furious at Chun Yo-won's behavior that he tried to attack him. Clang! Great Guardian Marakim blocked him as he was the closest to Yangzhou. Yangzhou tried to get past the man by using his sword, but the opponent wasn't an easy one, and he was called the Dark King. How fast is he? Yangzhou thought that he could charge in and have at least one chance to attack, but when he took a single step forward, he felt something cold touching his neck. All of a sudden, Marakim, who was close to him, swung his sword towards his neck. In a fleeting moment, the warning from Marakim flashed through Yangzhou's mind. "I swear, take one more step and I will make sure to cut you down." Yangzhou's eyes widened. As promised, with just one step, his throat would be cut. No. Flustered, he turned around and tried to move back, but Marakim's sword was too fast. As the cold sword touched his neck, his face, which showed only fear, broke out in cold sweat. Fuck! Quack! The attack that collided with his sword made Yangzhou fall heavily to the floor. He'd been warned, but he hadn't been killed. Marakim had knocked him down with his sword. To act like the Lord is hard. No matter how horrible the situation was, the opponent was a high-ranked military officer of the imperial family. It was difficult to kill such people as Chun Yo-won had done. Furthermore, without the Lord's order, they couldn't kill anyone. In other words, only Yo-won got to decide who got killed. What a mess. What is going on? It was embarrassing for the Emperor's disciples, but even Changsu, a long-standing member of the alliance, looked at Chun Yo-won and the Emperor with a perplexed expression. From the point of view of one of the forces of Justice's leaders, who had a close relationship with the Emperor, he had to intervene and stop him. If the Emperor died, the current stable relationship between Wulin and the Empire would collapse. But even more confusing were the words that Chun Yo-won had spoken a moment before. He is going to make the second prince the new emperor? Then, did the prince join hands with the demonic cult? Yulin was the one that had maintained a closer relationship with the emperor and the crown prince, who was supposed to inherit the throne, in order to continue Yulin's ties with the imperial family. Yulin had been convinced that it was the eldest son, Zhu Taiyun, who would inherit the throne, and they had supported him with everything. However, this time, the plan had gone wrong because of the Crown Prince's attempt to join hands with the Blade God 6 martial clan. This can't go on. If that happens, the balance of Yulin and the imperial family which we tried to maintain until now will be disrupted. It was something they were aware of. Chongsu had to prevent the worst from happening, but the problem was that he could do nothing on his own. For me to feel so powerless. It would take 10 superior master warriors to take down one supreme master. But the opponent was a divine master. The 17 leaders of the forces of justice, would they even be able to take down this monster, even if all of them joined hands? He is an army on his own. That was the difference that one level, especially at the peak, made in martial arts. The influence of a single strong warrior would be able to determine the flow of the war. The current lord of demonic cult, Chun Yowan, was such a legendary existence. Your Majesty? Kook! Let go of him now. Even if the officers cried out, there was no use. As they were being suppressed by Yowan's energy, there was no way for them to save their emperor. All they could do was scream while kneeling down. Is this the true power of a divine master? That was when the emperor came to terms with his humiliating reality. Being in the middle of the imperial palace, and in midst of the numerous military officials and commanders, this man was scared of nothing and cornered everyone. Chun Yowan, a divine master, had all the ability to kill him whenever he wished. I overestimated myself. I was told by the past emperor to never break down the non-aggression treaty. The previous emperor had warned him to never try and overpower the people of Wulin. Although aware of it, the emperor had only regarded Wulin as a group of people and never took an actual interest in them. It was only now that he came to realize his fatal mistake. If this man, Chun Yowan, put his mind to it, he could have quietly assassinated the emperor in the middle of the night. Wait! Hopefully, his purpose might? Suddenly, a strange idea crossed the emperor's mind. If a man with such ability was greedy for power, he could have quietly assassinated the emperor rather than creating such a scene in the underground. If he kills me to put Jutaikon on the throne, he will have to shed more blood as he would have to kill the officials who support the other princes. It was something that the man in front of him couldn't have known. At that moment, the man who had killed the guardian escort without showing any mercy was currently suppressing him with his energy, whilst holding him midair. This is a showcase of his overwhelming abilities. He showed that he was a monster who couldn't be controlled. And it was something the officials in the underground had clearly realized. Chun Yowan's goal had been achieved. Lord of the demonic cult, this person wants something from me. Then, the emperor, convinced of it, was about to open his mouth, but then someone appeared between him and Chun Yowan. He was none other than Jutaikon. Jutaikon appeared, put his hands together, and then bowed. Shocked, Chun Yowan asked, "What are you doing, Prince?" "Lord Chun, please stop this." Unexpectedly, Jutaikon was trying to dissuade Chun Yowan from harming the emperor. The emperor couldn't understand the situation. This kid and the demonic cult aren't one team? The emperor had thought that Jutaikon and Chun Yowan were on the same boat. Jutaikon was the son of a concubine. Although he was born a prince, it was no exaggeration to say that he was behind the third prince when it came to the emperor's favor. Such a man had gotten the chance to become the emperor if he received Chun Yowan's support. I understand how displeasing this situation is. However, our agreement was only to remove the spies of the Blade God 6 martial clan in the palace. Blade God 6 martial clan? Hearing that, the emperor was even more confused. It wasn't like he didn't know the clan. In a way, the emperor knew that they had been the ones supporting Zhu Taiyun, who wanted to make them a major faction in the non-aggression treaty. The promise is being kept. Even so, you can't touch His Majesty the Emperor? Despite his pale face, Jutaikon's words came out strong. It was like he was trying to fight against some injustice. This appearance caused confusion amongst the emperor and his companions. With a cold gaze, Chun Yowan spoke to Jutaikon. It was the same during the founding time. We were helping the dynasty then too, but the results are always the same with you people. Chun Yowan looked at the guardian escort's body. If it hadn't been for the overwhelming power they had, the demonic cult would have been forced to swear allegiance even after helping the imperial family. That, as His Majesty said, when a favor continues, it gets mistaken for a privilege. Our cult is about to stop doing that from now. I see no reason to show favor to the Empire, the imperial family, or His Majesty. The Emperor's face hardened at Yowan's words. It felt like Chun Yowan really wanted to strike him down. Zhu Taikan shouted again. Ugh, stop. It is because His Majesty doesn't know the truth. Sorry, but I am in no mood to tell the truth right now. If you don't move, I'll move you with force. I won't move. If you are going to kill His Majesty, you'll have to cut me down first. Chen Youan clicked his tongue after seeing Zhu Taikan speak such words with a trembling body. You are being too stubborn. With those words, Chen Youan waved his hand. Crack! Quack! Zhu Taikan, who'd been standing with his arms wide open, suddenly had both his legs broken and he fell to the floor. Flustered at the sight of Zhu Taikan screaming in pain, the emperor shouted, What are you doing? Didn't you say that you were going to kill me and put this child on the throne? Even if he was a child from a concubine, he was still the emperor's child. What kind of a parent would watch their children suffer? Without hesitation, Chen Youan answered, It doesn't matter as long as he is alive. Ma? The emperor was at a loss for words. It was impossible to predict the way Chen Youan did things. He seemed like a man who ignored conventional wisdom. He was very different from the Yulin people he met frequently. Is this the demonic cult? Clench! Collapsed on the floor and screaming, Zhu Taikan looked up with a pained face and shouted, Please, Lord Chen, spare His Majesty. Despite his pleading voice, Chen Youan responded without a blink. You still haven't come to your senses even after having your 2 legs broken? Then I guess I'll take your hands as well. When Chen Youan raised his hand, the emperor shouted, Lord Chen! Stop! Don't do it! Crack! Chen Youan ignored his words and turned his hand, which made Zhu Taikan's arms twist. With tears flowing from his eyes, the emperor spoke. I lost. At the declaration of defeat from the emperor's mouth, the faces of the eunuchs, admirals, and commanders hardened. The words that should never come out of an emperor's mouth were heard. How could Your Majesty? Not listening to his officials' words, the emperor continued to speak. I have lost. I will grant everything that Lord Chen wants. Please have mercy on me and my kids. The declaration of complete surrender. If this news was to spread, it would cause serious trouble across the entire empire. Will you keep your words? I will. Chen Youan's mouth rose into a smile at those words. He'd finally gotten the answer he was looking for. The emperor closed his eyes, feeling horrible after looking at Chen Youan's expression. Indeed, there was something he wanted. It was a hunch, and in the end, the opponent's intentions were clear. Thud! Quack! The emperor, who was in the air, fell to the ground. The emperor collapsed onto the floor and couldn't get up as his legs were still shaking. Looking down at the emperor, Chen Youan spoke. The requirements will be heard in 2 days from now in His Majesty's palace. Make sure you have your seals ready to process the requests. Seal. The emperor's gloomy expression hardened more at those words. If a formal paper had been stamped, it was like turning it into an official document, like signing the treaty the same way the first emperor had. The greatest disgrace ever for the emperor. The emperor, enraged, looked at Chen Youan furiously, but only received a mischievous smile in return that looked more like a warning. The reason I gave you 2 days is to give His Majesty and the officials of the imperial palace the time needed to find out the truth. And Chen Youan waved his hand in the air. The 300 or so guards and eunuchs, who'd been unable to move, began slamming their heads into the ground as if someone was controlling them. Bang! 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 Quack! Kook! With their foreheads bleeding, they all fell to the ground. They hadn't died, but they'd fainted from a strong concussion. If you do anything useless this time, I will really take your head. Therefore, I believe that you will make a wise decision. Kook understood. An obvious threat, the emperor bowed his head and answered in a bitter voice. Chen Youan had already shown that he could kill anyone. Leaving behind the emperor, who could no longer make eye contact, Chen Youan spoke to his subordinates. Let's go. Yes. Shouting aloud, the members of demonic cult followed Chen Youan. Even Ranyang, who had been protecting the treasure and the shrine for many years, looked at the hall one last time and disappeared. After they'd gone, the 2 admirals and the commanders, who were pushed to the back, knelt down and cried before the emperor. Your Majesty, we were powerless and have committed a grave sin. Please give us a chance to remove this disgrace. Give me a chance, Your Majesty? The emperor calmed himself and looked at them whilst speaking in an angry voice. You say such things now that he's left? The two admirals and commanders were embarrassed at the emperor's words. They didn't know what to say. They couldn't give an answer. It was true that they couldn't act when Chen Yuan and his subordinates were present. In response, Elder Chongsu, the elder of the forces of justice, cautiously spoke. Your Majesty, if you want, I can inform Yulin. I expect the elder to stay out of this. Yes, yes. The emperor looked at them pathetically and bit his lip. If you don't want me to face disgrace anymore, don't talk about this matter ever again. And never, Lord of the Demonic, don't touch him. Yes. When they answered, the emperor looked at Prince Zhu Taikan, who was lying in front of him. He'd fainted from the extreme pain. The emperor looked at him pitifully, patted his back lightly, and ordered the eunuchs. You men, take my son to the infirmary. Yes. Smirk. However, Zhu Taikan, who was thought to have fainted, had a small smile on his lips.